Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back to my channel. I have got devil horns on, which despite what the title of the video might suggest, actually has nothing at all to do with making a political statement and everything to do with the fact that tonight is the eve before Halloween. It's festive evilness, which is very much on brand because Halloween in my culture where I come from just so happens to be one of the biggest festivals of the entire year. We're basically like Catholics on crack. But that is not the purpose of today's video. This is not a cultural deep dive as much as I do enjoy filming those, but no, today's video is more about, well, actually today's video is more about trying to reach the goal of keeping a video under 15 minutes long. Because apparently I am both mentally and physically incapable of doing that, or so it would seem from my previous escapades. But I can't promise that that's going to happen tonight either. But we shall see. We shall see where it turns out. And this little spiel is not helping me achieve that goal. But no, on a more serious note, tonight's video is going to be an especially weird one. And if you are one of the viewers out there who are already functioning under the belief that I am constantly in a state of psychosis, tonight's video is not going to do anything to relieve that opinion. I will put that on the table straight up. Because that's okay. As I've said many, many times before, and I'm sure I'll say many, many times into the future, reality does not require your belief to exist. And honestly, tonight's video has less to do about trying to entertain you all or educate you all, and it's more to do about having something on hand for my own personal records. So tonight's video is, self-admittedly, half scientific exploration and half, well, from your perspective, delusional rant. So, I went on a road trip with Drest. Happy Halloween. Which already sounds completely and totally insane because he is a literal psychopath. But if you have never knowingly known a psychopath before, then you probably have no idea how their brains work. When they say something, they mean it 100% of the time. There's no playing around. What you see is what you get. It's like the psychopathy. Let's Google translate it because I don't know how to say it properly. Psychopathy. It's like the psychopathy grants them the superpower of complete and total reliability. Because back when Drest and I were friends, and we were friends for a pretty long time, he could tell me things that no other person on the face of the planet could tell me. Like, he could tell me the most horrific, brutal home truths about myself. Stuff that had my mother or my best friend or my husband try to tell me, I would have lost my absolute shit. But I could tolerate it coming from him because the thing about Drest, and I guess psychos in general, is that when he speaks, to this day, when he speaks, even when I hate his guts now, but when he speaks with no ego. There is no malice. There is no self-projection in what he's trying to tell you. It is just complete and honest, brutal truth. You know, it just is. Well, you probably don't know, but you can probably get a sense of what I'm trying to say. So Drest, he shows up at my house on Monday morning and he declares what is called a Switzerland truce. And he declared it for 48 hours. Why 48 hours? I have no idea, but he declared it for 48 hours. And he's like, do you want to go out to eat with me? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I do not want to go out to eat with you. Switzerland truce or not, I cannot be seen in public eating with your ass in this town. And he's like, okay, well, where do you want to go to eat outside of this town? And so I think for a moment, and then I jokingly respond to him, well, I want to go to China Bar, which is this Chinese chain restaurant in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And, you know, that's the joke of it, in that we are nowhere near Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And so we are not within driving distance of a China bar, which was just my, cue to him that no, I don't want to go out eating with you regardless of where we're going out to eat because I hate your guts. But no, that was not the end of it. Drest pulls out his phone and starts smashing buttons on it. Not that, the phone had buttons. It was a touchscreen. I'm being dramatic for dramatic effect. But he starts smashing buttons on it until he somehow manages to concoct out of thin air a singular China bar location in suburban Sydney. And so he's like, okay, I found one that's in reasonable driving distance. Let's go. And I just stared at him like, are we seriously about to do this? And yes, we seriously did just do that. In that we jumped in his Mustang because he's a cliche villain who drives a Mustang and drove 9 whole hours to some leafy Sydney suburb to jump out of said car and go into a chain restaurant where we spent about maybe 40 minutes eating noodles before jumping back in the car to drive 9 hours home again. It was completely and totally unhinged. So we talked the whole way there and we talked the whole way back, which, you know, in hindsight was about things that were pretty important, which shouldn't be surprising, and it isn't surprising when I think about it, because Drest was not doing this out of the kindness of his heart. Drest doesn't have a heart. I mean, well, you know, technically he does, physically speaking, have a heart. It'd be pretty scary if he didn't, and pretty, you know, medically notable. But he doesn't have a metaphorical heart that has, you know, kindness and love and all that warm and fuzzy stuff in it. He's a psychopath. But my God, it pissed me off so bad. It pissed me off so bad because we naturally got onto the topic about this weekend, and this weekend just so happens to be, you know, not only Halloween and All Souls Day and All Saints Day, the good stuff, it also happens to be the weekend in which I am being forced, against my will, per usual, to fly down to Melbourne to talk to some very fancy and very scientific people about some equally fancy and scientific things. Which in hindsight, I think means that I probably should have just stayed in Melbourne for this week, took an annual leave and stayed in Sydney, not Melbourne, that I should have stayed in Sydney this week instead of, you know, having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow and drive down to Sydney to get on a plane and fly down to Melbourne. But you live and you learn. So as we're driving, he tells me that when he first got here, they tried to force him to do the same kind of meetings that they dragged me to every 3 months, like clockwork. But they only ever got him to go to one. Just one. And at that one that they managed to coerce him into attending, he only met with one scientist, the poor guy. And I'm saying he's a poor guy because I know the story. But the poor guy who drew the short straw to have the first session with him. The scientist comes in and he is young and he is visibly nervous but very, very excited to be there. And he sits across from the table from Drest because they're in an interview room. Who knows why he's excited to be in Drest Levesque's presence? I am never excited to be in Drest Levesque's presence, but you know what? Each to their own. He sits across from Drest and he lays out all his little questions on the table. And Drest sits there and he looks at the questions and he looks back at the scientist and he goes, "Let's make a deal, Clarice," because he's an asshole the highest order, right? He goes, "Let's make a deal, Clarice. Quid pro quo. I will answer every single question that you have. I will give you everything that you want to know. But in exchange, I want something from you first. Something small, something that you will never ever miss. I want one of your teeth. Go to the toilet right now. It's right down the hall and look in the mirror. Pick a tooth, any tooth. I don't care which one. You've got dozens of them. You won't even notice that one is gone, trust me. But you will want the answers to these questions." And as he's explaining this, I'm just looking at him like, why? And he just said that it felt like the right move at the time, which apparently it was, because they cancelled the rest of the weekend right then and there, and they've never bothered to try to book him in again. I mean, to be fair, he's so notoriously non-compliant these days that, and I know this because I asked him because it was interesting to me, but they only, according to him, only contact him now like once or twice a year, and that's it, unless they're actively trying to seek out his skills and trying to hire him for those kind of purposes. But other than that, they just leave him alone more or less these days. But I can't do that. I am not about to tell some young new graduate scientist that he physically needs to rip out his own teeth for the honor of a conversation with me. Partly because it's completely unhinged and psychotic, and partly because some of the scientists that I do speak with, I legitimately think that some of them would consider the possibility of doing it, and I am not sure which outcome is worse. And he tells me that he's not suggesting that I demand lobotomies in exchange for meetings, just that if I don't want to go to Melbourne, that I shouldn't go. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen if I refuse to get on the plane? Nothing. They're just going to grumble, they're going to make a few empty threats, they're going to readjust their schedules, and then everyone's going to move on. And then he looks at me like I'm an idiot, and he goes, "You do understand that they're trying to bioengineer God, right?" Like, yes, I understand that. I am not an idiot. Clearly he thinks I'm an idiot, but I'm not an idiot. I understand exactly what they're trying to do. But for the record, A is not God, so it doesn't help anyway. He's a freak of nature. He is arguably the biggest freak of nature. He is a singularity, but he is not God, and it does absolutely nobody any good to refer to him as such. So we went back and forth on this for a good solid hour because, per usual, Drest Levesque is an idiot who doesn't understand things and just keeps talking out his ass because he thinks I'm the idiot. But I'm not the idiot. I have handed them A's entire genome report, multiple times on multiple occasions to multiple people. Do you know how many genes there are in the human genome? It's a lot. I'm talking like 20,000 individual protein-coded genes here. And I have handed them a roadmap to every single one. How is it my fault that genetically speaking, A is just not that interesting? Drest? Sure. Drest is interesting if they wanted to, poke at product Drest. He's interesting. His genome is a car crash of inbreeding. He's basically a walking biome of 1,200 years of genetic drift. That's interesting. But A's genes are for the most part completely and totally normal. There's not that much to be poking and prodding at in terms of scientific interest when it comes to his DNA. And that's not my fault. There's nothing I can do about that. I am not his mother. I did not breed him. What makes him a freak of nature is not the DNA sequence, it's the expression of it. And you cannot replicate that in a lab. You just can't. The only unique feature in his genome is the substitution at codon 178. Aspartic acid is replaced by glycine. That, combined with the methionine at codon 129, is mildly notable. But even that is not unique to him. And personally, I would not touch that with a 10-foot CRISPR pole because codon 178 just so happens to share genomic real estate with the mutation responsible for causing fatal familial insomnia. In fact, if you pull the two of them apart and look at the individual pieces, they are almost biological duplicates, which, if you ask me, is probably the scariest part of the entire night so far. So, good luck engineering that one in a lab because the smallest of errors, so much as a single incorrect base pair substitution, and you have potentially just triggered one, if not multiple, of the known, again, keyword being known, prion disease mutations that live on the PI and P gene, which is exactly how you end up with genetically enhanced inheritable mad cow disease, so enjoy that one. And once you remove that from the equation, the rest of it collapses because that mutation, flawed and risky as it may be, seems to act as like a biological coolant. It floods the cells with excess energy and hydration to stabilize A's otherwise unstable gene expression. And without that corrective effect on the cellular level, any child that's born with the rest of A's epigenetic cascade, you know what, they can't even be born. I don't even think that they would be born. I think the mother's body would recognize it as an unviable fetus. But if by some divine miracle the child did end up being born, I think that they would be born in a completely catastrophic state. Now, clearly this is just pure speculation on my part, but honestly, I'm willing to bet a lot of money that a baby born with A's entire epigenetic expression, except without the PRNP gene mutation, would very rapidly develop a syndrome that looked remarkably similar, almost identical to that of anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis. And if you don't know what that is, and honestly, why would you? It is basically just a very rare autoimmune disease in which the body starts attacking its own NMDA receptors, leading to massive inflammation within the brain. Think chronic flu-like symptoms, like actual flu-like symptoms, not a cold, flu-like symptoms, and progressive psychosis and cognitive regression, just all leading up to a full-blown neurodegeneration. This is why I don't teach, because my English is absolutely atrocious. Give me more than 3 syllables and my English skills leave the building like Elvis. But in my best attempt at plain English, it is basically a condition where the brain burns itself alive from inside out, and it is every bit as horrific and painful as it sounds. Okay, let's play a game and just, for argument's sake, say that they do manage to isolate and replicate the PRNP gene mutation within a lab environment. So what? That still doesn't make you a god, that just gives you a prion disease. Because we know for a fact, okay, at least I know for a fact, that the rest of it is not genetic. And I can tell you exactly why that is. Because to even begin shaping A in the first place, you need to be able to replicate a monozygotic twinning event in a lab environment. And you can't do that. Not only can you not do that, you don't even know what causes a monozygotic twinning event to occur. And even if you did, which again, you don't, being a monozygotic twinning event is not enough. You need a monozygotic twinning event, which sounds like something I just made up. But I didn't. You can look it up. And if you can't simulate the monozygotic twinning, then you lose the biological quantum field event, which is the big one, the God trait, if you would. And without that, the rest of the whole entire thing just falls flat on its face. Now, sure, in theory, and I guess you could, and I'm sure that they have, you could attempt to do it with an embryonic splitting, but that is not the same thing as a twinning event. It lacks the instability, it lacks the violence, it does not generate the same conditions to force the quantum rupture. Let's keep playing. Let's say, for conversation's sake, that you are also able to remove that factor from the equation. Okay, so that leaves us with two things. It leaves us with the recursive neural pattern, and it leaves us with the epigenetic cascade. Okay, so of the two, I guess really of all of the conditions, the easiest to engineer is the recursive pattern, because at its core it's essentially just an extreme developmental malformation. But that's also what makes it so impossible to engineer and replicate, because you're not so much trying to fix something in a genetic genome, you're trying to break something in a very specific, non-repeatable pattern. It's like trying to smash a mirror and hoping that the shards will magically fall into a perfect replica of the Mona Lisa. Because that's what A is. He is the human embodiment of the infinite monkey theorem, which, if you don't know what that is, it's the idea that if you gave a monkey a typewriter and an infinite amount of time, it would purely by coincidence end up typing the complete works of Shakespeare. It's essentially the scientific answer to anything that can happen will happen given enough time. A is that monkey. He is nature's biggest freak. He's the product of not one, not two, but three near zero probability genetic expressions stacked on top of two low probability biological events. So if they genuinely, truly believe in their hearts that they can replicate that, all of that in a lab environment, they are delusional. They can fantasize about bioengineering God as much as they want. It's not going to happen, which is exactly why I'm so comfortable handing them the biome, because I know for a fact that they do not have the scientific capabilities of replicating it, and I'm sick and tired of talking about it. Not least of all because A is not fucking God. Well, you know what? He may be. It's none of my business. Which, of course, that naturally led to a philosophical debate, which was completely stupid because A is not God. He is objectively not God, which Drest knows and agrees with, and yet he still felt the need to poke the polar bear. So on the drive home for a good 45 minutes to an hour, Drest and I are going back and forth, and it's the most annoying thing. It's so annoying. And what makes it even more annoying is that I swear that he's doing it just to get to me, which in reflection, he most likely was doing it just to get to me. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that at the heart of his argument at Drest's debate is that doesn't matter if A is technically not God, if he feels like God to everybody else. If the creator of reality is the one capable of simulating billions of fully functioning minds that can see and feel and create and suffer, at what point does the simulation stop being a simulation and become its brand new own universe? And if that is indeed what A has done, does that not make him God by function, if not by title? And I'm just like, dude, I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. And I didn't care. I didn't care in the car, and I don't care sitting here, because the truth of the matter is that God or not, which objectively is not, but God or not, it has no practical impact on me and my life. I'm still here. Drest, unfortunately, is still here too. And for me, at least, I have, regardless of what tier of reality we're in, I have no choice but to remain here until the powers that be declare it otherwise. So I would honestly prefer not to think about it. Everything that happens within the simulation is tangibly real within that layer. So all your little dramas, all your little deaths, all your little dreams, localized events, buffer overflow, not backed up in base reality, but consciously felt and experienced at the point of interaction. But does that make any tangible difference between this reality and the base reality? No, it doesn't. Because until we hit one of the very specific end marks, which are essentially like wrapped up to either A gets bored and decides to wake up, or the clock runs out and we start approaching 2090, because this is my first rodeo, so I don't know for certain. But apparently it's not Drest's first rodeo, and he says that he won't stay beyond 2090 because it's kind of like waking up the morning after taking 12 tequila shots, and I just won't do it. So until one of those two things happen, there is no difference between me and anybody else. So I would prefer not to think about it, because frankly, it gives me a headache. At the end of the day, I gain absolutely nothing. I gain no perks from this setup. I get no special access. I get no special treatment. If anything, I gain materially less and spiritually less as well from A's existence here than I do back home. Drest would probably argue that point, but he'd be wrong. My day-to-day life is virtually indistinguishable from anybody else who lives entirely within the simulation. So there is that. I eat food and it tastes real, and I feel emotions and they feel real to me in the moment, and I talk to people and they talk back to me as if they are real. It all feels exactly the same way that it feels at home. So seemingly, my brain is functioning on the exact same hardwire as everybody else. I see what they see, I eat what they eat, I stub my toe and it hurts. So tell me, what is the point in trying to overthink the reality of reality itself? I'm not unhappy here, I'm not bored, I'm largely just indifferent to most things, but to be completely and totally fair, I'm also largely indifferent to most things at home anyway, because I have been for a very, very long time. So I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care to know, which is exactly why I hate the meetings and why I hate all the obligation. Because it's like, if you want to talk to A, go and talk to A. What does it have to do with me? Why do I continually get dragged into it? It has nothing to do with me. I'm not his mother. I'm not his keeper. If anything, he's my keeper. Not that I, gain much from that. But then, of course, Drest disputes that point, because he always disputes the points. And he's all like, well, why do you think there was one specific location of China Bar in Sydney, and not even in Sydney, but in some leafy, affluent suburb that no one's ever heard of, a suburb that is not particularly well known for its food scene. And yet, surprise, there it is, a China Bar location, the only one outside of Melbourne, a restaurant that you specifically wanted to eat at. Wake up. And what am I supposed to say to that? Ooh, thank you so much, Mr. A, my Christ and Savior, for giving me the miracle of mediocre Chinese food. Couldn't give me the $5 million that I asked for the last time I was at your house, even knowing I know for a fact that you have given yourself more money than the Catholic friggin' church. No, giving me $5 million was too much of a stretch of an imagination, but that's all forgiven and forgotten now that you've given me the miraculous gift of some shitty chain restaurant, a 9-hour drive from my house instead of like a 14-hour drive in the opposite direction. Like, thank you so much. My life is forever changed. And then I break out into an a cappella performance of Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. And Drest actually has the audacity to sit there and say to my face, well, technically it was to my side because he was driving the car, but has the audacity to sit there and say to my face, well, actually, Casey, A is very good to you, but he's not, because again, he refused to give me $5 million, which might sound petty, okay, but I'm not asking for anything that he has not given himself. Like, he fully understands that money makes the world go round. And apparently he's fine with Drest having money, because Drest has enough money to make a Kardashian look like a pauper. But I can't have money. Everyone else is allowed to have money. I'm not allowed to have money unless I earn it a good, honest way. Because, I don't get to have the same choices that they get to have here. They get to have choices in life and do whatever they want. Not that, their dream lives are particularly how I would want to live my life. But the point is, they get choices. And then, just to add the cherry on top of the pie, Drest proceeds to call me to my face or my side, depending on how technical you want to be. He proceeds to call me, and I quote, a fat, lazy heifer, unquote, which, was lovely. According to Drest friggin' Levesque, I complain constantly about being stuck here, but deep down inside, I actually like it. Secretly, I want to be here, and that's why I refuse to do any of the work, which, by the way, he personally set me at the bequest of A, because I apparently want to be managed. He says that I enjoy having handlers in charge of my life telling me what I need to do and when I need to do it, because deep down inside, I love waking up in a shit-tier reality that has no expectations on anybody, where most people just coast through life being aggressively mediocre, because that means that I have an excuse then to never rise to the occasion or perform well under pressure, because nobody else does either. But that's not it. I like working hard and I thrive on risk, and I love routine, probably more than anybody that honestly I would care to know, because I would hate to meet someone who loves routine more than I love routine. But that's the problem, is that it's almost impossible to maintain a routine here, because everything is automated and nothing is urgent, and it's half the time it's just me laying in my bed awake at 2 a.m. scrolling through my phone because it's near impossible to find anything here to structure my day around. And what's the alternative? What other option is available to me other than to assimilate? There is no other option. So when he says, do the work, I have to ask, for what? For who? To which end? Because these journals, these stupid journals that he gave me, these journals are stupid. They're idiotic. They are specifically designed for people who grew up in a curated little box of normality. And I don't want to do them. Think about your legacy. What legacy do you want to leave behind? Like, who is that for? And do you think that Drest is doing the work right now? I seriously doubt that. For the life of me, I cannot picture Drest friggin' Levesque sitting down with a nice warm mug of Earl Grey tea to journal out his favorite childhood memory. It's just not happening. So why the hell should I have to do it? And let me just say, if I seriously believed for 1 second that doing these stupid journal prompts would make one shred of difference, I would do them. I would sit down every single night at this table and fill in these stupid journals until they were all finished or my hand fell off, whichever one came first. But it's not going to make a difference. And so I'm not going to do them. But it's not going to change anything. It's not going to help in any tangible capacity. And even if it did help while I was here, I'm going to forget about it the very moment that I wake up. So I'm not going to waste my time doing it. Anyway, am I going to Melbourne this weekend? I don't know. I might take Drest up upon his suggestion, not because he's smart, but because it's Halloween, which also means that it is All Saints Day, which also means that it's All Souls Day, which, like I said at the start, are very big cultural holidays where we are from. You know, All Souls, may the wicked and the unholy take mercy upon the living, and that means that I should really just stay at home and fold stars for the recently departed. But I don't know, we'll see. But until then, this is Casey signing off for the night. As always, stay weird out there, stay safe, and fold stars. It's the least you can do to keep yourself and your family safe.